I just came from an open hearing with FBI Director Chris Wray, and he said under oath that no one from the FBI communicated with Twitter regarding the Hunter Biden laptop story. Based upon both of your courageous reporting, can you address that?
I mean, we saw, I mean, like I said, we don't know. I mean, so at this point, we just have to take his word on it. But what we saw was a huge amount of FBI communications to Twitter. We saw the former deputy chief of staff, the former general counsel showing up at Twitter right at the critical period. So I find a lot of suspicious activity. I would like to ask him a bunch of questions about that because I find it very suspicious and unresolved.
Mr. Taibbi, do you have comments on that?
We do know that there was a teleporter communication that had 10 documents in it just before the story broke, but we don't know what those documents were, so we can't suppose.
Well, I don't take his word for it. We have lots of examples where it has not been, they have not been accurate from that particular agency when it comes to testifying before Congress. So it is our job in this committee to get to the truth, to shine sunlight and transparency for the American people. I want to ask you both about the Aspen Digital Hack and Dump Working Group, which involved an 11-day scenario in October 2020 that began with the imaginary release of falsified records, that's what they claim, related to Hunter Biden's controversial employment by the Ukrainian energy company Burisma.
Right.
This was if they knew, because they did know. So I would like your comments, Mr. Schellenberg. These were the files that you did extensive reporting on about how concerning this is and how this is truly the definition of the weaponization against free speech and suppressing accurate reporting.
Yeah, so there's actually two things, and one of them we just discovered recently, which is that there was a Stanford Cyber Policy Institute report, which said that, which was in menacing terms, telling journalists that they should abandon the Pentagon principle. Again, this is the Pentagon Papers principle. This is the idea that if Daniel Ellsberg brings you materials he's taken from the Pentagon about how the war in Vietnam is going, the New York Times and Washington Post published those. That was considered one of the greatest moments of American journalism. Here you have Stanford Cyber Policy Center saying we should abandon that principle. You should instead make the issue about, frankly, the theories about where it might have come from. Then you had the Aspen workshop, which was attended, by the way, by New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, Wikipedia, Facebook, Twitter, many other journalists, where they basically, you read it, it's like a kind of programming of the journalists that they should not follow this longstanding journalistic principle of taking materials from a hack and leak or any other situation and take them seriously. So, I mean, you read this and it feels like a kind of brainwashing exercise that Aspen Institute and Stanford were running against American journalists and the social media companies.
Mr. Taibbi, comments?
Yes, I think there were a couple of moments in the Twitter files that really speak to a kind of larger problem. In the first Twitter files, we saw an exchange between Representative Rouhana and Vijaya God, where he's trying to explain the basics of speech law in America, and she seems completely unaware of what, for instance, New York Times v. Sullivan is. There are other cases like Bartnicki v. Vopper, which legalize the publication of stolen material. That's very important for any journalist to know. I think most of these people are tech executives and they don't know what the law is around speech and around reporting. And in this case, and in 2016, you were dealing with true material. There is no basis to restrict the publication of true material, no matter who the source is and how you get it. And journalists have always understood that. And this has never been an issue or a controversial issue until very recently.
And by the way, just one quick thing I'll add. That's the exact same strategy of the malinformation, misleading. In other words, they were saying even if the material you think is true, it could lead people to have conclusions that we don't want them to have, and therefore you should change your journalism because of that. So this is, we're so far down the slippery slope, you've crashed at that point. I mean, it's a disturbing trend in journalism, in social media, and in the relationship from the intelligence community to these organizations.
How have you been targeted since the publication of the Twitter files?
Gentlelady's time expired. We'll give a quick answer if we can.
I mean, again, I've known journalists who've suffered real brutal harms in my career, so they've said a lot of nasty things about me on Twitter, but it hasn't been so bad, I would say. The FTC thing is the only thing that's legitimately concerning, and that's not really for my sake. It's more because it's a general problem for journalists everywhere.
I've been censored on Facebook since the year 2020 for writing accurate information in an article that went viral. I remain censored. They continue to flag warnings on posts that I write that have nothing to do with the environment. And we now know that one of the US government-funded organizations has put out a report that specifically targets me and presents disinformation about my own position on climate change. And so I've got a lot at stake here.
Yield back.